Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Warren Planning Board. We have all the members present. If they sound off.
Matt Atwood,
Ashley Madera.
Brett Mobian.
Tyler Dixon,
Fred Massey,
Mike Gerhart. Jim Leffers.
and we have our alternate, Terry. We are going to turn the agenda on its head because we want to put the new business before the comprehensive plan elements for the convenience of 90%, if not 99% of the folks who've come. So we will have, we go through the planning director's report and the approval of the minutes, and then we will start our new business with 75 Croad Street. Take it away. Herb.
Just for your packets, there was the planning director's written report in there. It's pretty mundane from my perspective. So unless there was something in there that's excitable for planning members to talk about that you want to raise with me, I'll just leave it as provided to you in the packet.
Okay, and the minutes were distributed in the information that was sent in the packets. Does anyone have any comments or concerns?
No.
That being the case, I'd ask for an approval of the minutes as they stand. Of motion, please.
Second.
Okay. That was a motion of sorts. All in favor? Aye. All right. So as I said, there is no old business here other than the comprehensive plan elements, which we will get to afterwards. A bit of explanation for this new business. For the first two, Croad Street and Child Street, these are pre-applications which allow us to take a look at these. There is no decision being made on these tonight. The purpose of this is for a presentation to the board so that we can take a look at what they have in mind. In fact, we received from both applications very good and thorough backgrounders, so that we have a good sense of what's going on. For example, on the Child Street, Penny Lane, I don't think we need to go through all 12 pages of this soil analysis, but what we'd like is essentially the overview of this as opposed to the details. For Liberty Street, which is the third element, that group has gone through 3 or 4 actually technical review committees. However, that was before our new planner, Herb Durfee, came on board. And we are going to be asking those folks to go for another more formal technical review based on the fact that we want to have master plans in front of the board as Croad Street and Child Street have done before we have the technical review. That gives us a much more cogent sense of what is being presented and also how we can respond to that. So we'll go with Croad Street, the comprehensive permit, pre-application, 12-unit residential condominiums at 75 Croad. Hey, Brad.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the flip-flopping of the agenda. I'm sure that's appreciated by myself and everybody behind me. So thank you for that. My name is Brett Yadley. I'm here on behalf of 75 Croad Street LLC to introduce you to the conceptual plans for this development. As you'll hear, we plan to give a very brief overview from our development team. We're here to introduce you to the conceptual plans, which consist of 12 units, both market rate and affordable, that will comply with local, state, and HUD requirements. Our application, once we submit it, will satisfy, well, we believe it will satisfy all of the criteria and the required findings. But for purposes of today, we're really here to just give you the overview, introduce you to the development team. So before we get into the team, I'd like to call up the owner of the property first to introduce himself to you, give you a little background on the property and his involvement. So this time I'd like to call Clark Westcott.
Hello, everyone.
Evening.
So as you said, they had a pretty detailed presentation sent to you already, but I'll just kind of verbalize it. So 12 units on about 3/4 of an acre in what is now manufacturing zone, sort of mixed use, surrounded by business, R6 manufacturing on the east side of the bike path going out towards Twisted. We want to build 12 units in 3 buildings, keeping the livable square footage somewhere around 1,000 square feet per unit. The goal is sort of to extend the residential presence into this already sort of vibrant daytime district, sort of dies off at night and everybody sort of disappears. So we like to kind of bring residences over here. My goal is 25% affordable and 100% sort of attainable. And I'm trying to do that through the smaller square footage of the units. I'm not building 1,500 square foot, 1,800 square foot townhouses that are going to be pricing many out. So even the units, we're not really sure obviously where the numbers are going to fall, but my goal with the smaller units, say, oh, they're 1,000 square feet, that seems small, but a lot of people can make that work. And it's a great way to sort of get people into a brand new structure where they're not paying for a bunch of space that they don't need. So my background is, my dad and my uncle own the mill next door and the lot behind. So I've always sort of looked at this property. I know how it is during the day on Cutler and Crode and around Tom's Market. And I know how it is at night. And I just think this whole neighborhood would benefit from some more ownership and presence at all hours. So that's sort of our goal. My dream would be for the sort of mill community and the business community to sort of trickle in and say, oh, I could live across the street and I could walk to my job. That's obviously not something I have control over, but I would love for that to happen. There aren't a lot of single family residences in that neighborhood. So it's just an interesting opportunity. And that's sort of what we're going for.
Great. Thank you. You will require a zoning change. That's
yes,
to move forward, which is part of that process. And are these rentals or purchase?
they would be for sale units.
For sale. Okay.
Yep.
And I'm not going to ask the cost because
Yeah,
it just
who knows, but-
it's going to take a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
not sure yet. We haven't gotten that far. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, Chris Duhamel from Deprete Engineering, just to give a brief overview of the project. A point of clarification, we're actually seeking we're not seeking a zone change. We're looking for recognition as residential multifamily.
Thank you, Brett. I'm Chris Duhamel, Deprete Engineering. I'm a professional land surveyor and engineer, and I'm here to present the pre-application stage plans. There is quite a bit of data that's already attained for this development, so it brings credibility to what we're proposing. We have a Class 1 survey from Waterman Engineering. We have the boundary established through that. We have the utilities that exist at the frontage, 8-inch sewer, 8-inch water main. Depree Engineering has evaluated the site for wetlands as wetlands off-site, greater than 100 feet off-site from the on the southeast corner that presents no buffers from freshwater wetlands on the property. There is test holes completed by Depree Engineering that show suitable soils, 48-inch in the northwest corner of the site to 18-inch at the northeast corner of the site where the elevation drops. There is a floodplain on the site. There's a coastal floodplain, AE zone elevation 13. The grades on the site are elevation 8 to elevation 10. So that's a 3 to 5 foot height of floodplain on the site, which goes into the design of the property. And we have a 26,500 square foot site with 190 feet of frontage on Crode Ave. The zoning of the site is manufacturing. Bless you. For that reason, we feel it's available to go forward with a comprehensive permit to provide for 2-bedroom homes, as Clark has asked, 2-bedroom condominiums that are affordable to 25% low moderate income. So there'd be 9 market rate and 3 affordable housing properties. There's the design of the homes are garage under to lift the homes above the floodplain and then 2 stories. Notwithstanding that the 35-foot height will not be exceeded. It'll be less than 35 feet in height measured from the floodplain as required by the building code. What's proposed are a private driveway that would access the back of the property, a 20-foot private driveway. It's 288 feet long. The driveway and the homes are situated so that they would have fire access with the Warren ladder truck. Parking for the site is all on site with 1-car garages and driveways. So there's a minimum required parking of 1.5 spaces per unit. 18, we're providing for 24 with a garage and the driveway in front. So there's 2 spaces per unit. And lastly, stormwater, given the soils, the suitable soils on site, we'd be utilizing dry wells to mitigate the increase in runoff from the impervious surfaces. We mitigate it with dry wells and control the discharge to what's equal to present day conditions. The waivers that we'd be requesting through the master plan review would be dimensional waivers to the setbacks, the front yard, the side yard. Right now, we have about 5 feet of setback with this current configuration. And of course, the use of single-family multi-family use on the manufactured zoning. So with that said, I can take any questions after the presentation.
Is the building on the lower side of that the Cutler Mill? Is that what that is? The bottom part of the
Yes.
North.
Cutler Mill?
Over here.
This is
Up here.
the middle.
Oh, that's the Cutler Mill.
Across the street.
Thank you.
Nice Clark.
Anyone else?
Do the side yards, is it just on the, I guess, right side? Or the side yard variance being on both?
Yeah, if we flip to the screen. Yeah. What going up to the east is to the right. There's a 10-foot side yard from the front building. There's 5 foot on the back. There's 5 foot on Grove Street for a deck. But the majority of the building is set back greater than 10 feet.
Any of those garages designed with EV charging capability?
We certainly look at that now. That's a requirement of every
You can look at
development.
that.
Yeah.
220, 240, 50 amp circuits for EV chargers, that they're coming,
Yes,
each garage.
good point.
Anyone else? This is a well thought out presentation. Again, what will, the next step would be to present the master plan, bring it before a TRC, discuss with the heads of the departments that are relevant, the fire chief, the police chief, the director of public works, what concerns they would have about those through the typical TRC. Ball's in your court, but there, as you've seen, there's just a couple of questions that we had. And it's, I think the zoning issue is something that, in terms of manufacturing or residential, there is something we're also looking at in that area. Because we're in the middle of updating the comprehensive plan. So we're taking a look at what makes sense in Warren today, as opposed to 15 years ago, when a lot of those areas were established. So that's where we are. So thank you.
But I do have one other question. It wasn't enough on the gun. I'm just curious, when I look at like the flood maps and the GIS, and kind of read where they are and things like that. I know we've talked about in the past of Warren having a certain score of getting our Herb, you've talked about it, getting a score in terms of properties and flood zones. And will there be any issue with this getting insured, like in home insurance based on the location?
It would require flood insurance, but it'll meet all the flood requirements first. Freeboard above the flood
Okay, but
flood
the
elevation.
garages-
Yeah, the garages, the slab of the garage can't avoid it. It would be within the flood zone, but the lowest structural member of the building would be above the floodplain by a minimum of 1 foot freeboard.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give you the folks from Penny Lane a few moments to set up.
This is a land trust. I'm sure. We've talked about these trails in here. Nice thing it's so close to downtown. You'd have to work with DEM to do boardwalks. Unlike that.
The towns. With the.
So the attorney there was the guy who represented. Water Street, the attorney was.
Hi there. All right, bear with me.
Yourself or the screen?
Okay, the next piece of business is 581 Child Street, Penny Lane, comprehensive permit, pre-application, 40-unit multifamily residential buildings. And take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Frank Spinella. I'm the consultant for the East Bay Community Development Corporation. I've been working with them for 25 years in different developments throughout Bristol and Warren and Barrington. Penny Lane is a 40-unit, 100% affordable development on Child Street. We purchased the property from Penny Catalano, hence the name Penny Lane. With me, I have Diane Medeiros, the Executive Director of East Bay CDC, Paul Adaman from Union Studio Architects, Andrew Glines, and Christina Vieira from Fuss and O'Neill Engineers for any technical questions. I'll talk at a much higher level. This is a low-income housing tax credit development, very similar to Palmer Point, if you know the development that the East Bay CDC built on Solms Road in Barrington, just over the town line. We just completed that a few years ago. And this will be very similar. It's modeled very much after that. It's exactly the same team, same engineers, same architects, same developer. So incomes would range from a two-person family at $46,400, a three-person family at $52,260, and a four-person family at $58,020. So that's the market that we.
So just to be clear, 68, you're talking about 68,000 an annual salary?
Correct.
Okay, so again.
Annual salaries of $58,000 for a four-person family, $58,020, $52,260 for a three-person family, and $46,440 for a two-person family.
Okay.
So 60% of area median income, which is the low-income housing tax credit threshold for the maximum income you can rent to. So the site is on Child Street. We have the architects and the engineers to go through the actual technical questions of it. The existing house is the gray building to the top of the screen on the left, which will remain, and that will become two apartments. And all the other buildings will be, there are two buildings aside from the house that are on the site that will be raised. There's a barn and a garage, and we'll be building a new maintenance structure and an office. So those are buildings up at the top, number 16 and number 15, which will, 15 will also house the mail room. And then we've got the apartments scattered throughout the site. Through there, we have a fire access gate only at the back of the property connecting to the neighborhood below. And so it would be in and out off of Child Street. I can let Paul Adaman speak to any more detail if you'd like. It's a range of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments, all rental, 100% affordable.
How many, what is the proportion of 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom?
I think at the bottom left, so 8 1-bedrooms, 14 2-bedrooms, and 16 3-bedrooms.
Okay.
And then 2 2-bedroom units in the existing house.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you like the architect to present, or are we good? What was your preference?
Well, again, I think one of the things, do you also, I know that we received some of the pictures of what do you have those?
Of the existing?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
photographs of the planned houses. Yeah, proposed.
Yeah, we can, and you should know that Mr. Adamant and I have met with the planner and the head of Public Works. One of the biggest concerns we had, as well as the town has, is trash removal. And so this would all be private, so that there aren't 40 different bins up and down the street. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Paul Atman, Union Studio, principal in Providence, Rhode Island. This is where our practice is based. You may know me from being a town resident. But there isn't very much for me to share in terms of the architecture. They're all two-story buildings. They're predominantly townhouse style. So it's a single family, two-family IRC building code, and in which there are duplexes and threeplexes at the largest building type. And our focus, as many of you know, Union Studio is really focused on a mission-based practice of building and repairing communities, bringing value to places. And a lot of our work is affordable housing in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, but it doesn't preclude us to only to that. We've done a lot of work, Water Rower, headquarters here in Warren, Southside Community Land Trust, and housing for private developers as well as nonprofits. And with all in the mind of looking to traditional neighborhood design for our inspiration and creating walkable, livable neighborhoods. And we feel that Penny Lane on Child Street exemplifies that very well. It's a double loaded street, front porches that bring activity to the street, life in the sidewalks. Sidewalks connect all the buildings to one another. And there's a central green that will be used as passive recreation, as well as with storm water management techniques to create a sense of place for the community. And this is just representative of the proposed architecture. We're not going into colors yet, but very traditional materials, lap siding, double hung windows, asphalt shingles, all two-story within the 35-foot height limit of the zoning ordinance. And as you can see on the upper elevations, those are the 3-unit types. And we've created a 1-story, 2-bedroom for an ADA and a 1-bedroom ADA on either side to break down the scale so they're not all 2-story buildings. So it gives a little variety but consistency throughout the neighborhood.
So remind me what the development is in Barrington that you're modeling this after?
There on the west side, it's called Palmer Point. Developed and completed about 4 years ago. I'm sorry, on the east side along the Palmer River.
Is that? So
On
that's on
Soames
the
Road.
Palmer River.
Yes, and then another one about 20 years ago, 15 years ago with East Bay CDC called Sweetbriar, which is the west side of Barrington.
Off of Washington Road. Yeah.
Yes,
Washington.
yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if we went to those, that would be essentially a preview of what this is going to look like?
Yes, yep, in scale, character.
And economically as well, would those be, do those fit into the economic structure that you were,
Yes, so both of those developments are exactly the same structure as this. In fact, the Sweetbriar site, which is what this is on the west side of Barrington, we're refinancing, we're starting the refinance process right now, but that's a low-income housing tax credit development, and that's 46 units. And the site on the Palmer Point site on Soames Road is exactly 40 units as well. So it's exactly like this.
and again,
we're
that's
proposing.
based on those 1, 2, and 3 bedroom.
Correct.
Number,
Correct, a very similar mix. We found that the beauty of working with East Bay Community Development Corporation is they are the property manager in addition to being the developer. So they follow the resident from the time they move in till the time they ultimately move out. And we very rarely get move outs. So we know the population and what the needs of the population are within the community.
And you have, as you've noted, there's an office on site
Correct,
where someone from the East Bay community is.
correct. We
there.
would have a manager and a maintenance person. The maintenance person would probably move between developments. As a brand new development, you wouldn't need a full-time person to maintain the property, but landscaping and that sort of thing.
Would the manager live on site?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
And is that a 5-day a week, 7?
It would be a person that's shared between developments as well,
Oh, okay.
because, if you can imagine that there's a huge lift during lease up, then once they're occupied, once the units are occupied, the residents don't have that much need for interaction of a property manager on site, but, you know, and the office is in Bristol, the full-time office is in Bristol, right at the corporate office. So,
And then there's a laundromat as well.
so there'd be laundry facilities on site for the
And
residents.
is that fairly typical of the?
Very typical. Mhm.
Other questions?
Yeah.
So one quick one, I noticed one of the subdivision waivers is bituminous concrete berms rather than granite. You feel strongly about that?
So we found that in Barrington, we did the exact same thing. They required granite throughout, but we asked if it could be waived in this instance, because we've put all the money of these developments into the buildings. We'd prefer to keep it within the structure that the people can benefit from, and because it's rental, because we maintain it, we will own the buildings, all of them throughout their life. That's where we'd really like to focus the expense, and granite curbs are pretty costly.
Yeah, but they last a lot longer and they're not subject to snow plows, and
Right.
there are a lot of reasons why we call for granite curbs.
Yeah. If you notice on this development, I don't know if you can pull the site plan up again. Or that's actually okay too. Yeah, that's actually okay too. So on the Solms Road site, we have granite curbs as we come into the development. And then from that point on, it's all Cape Cod berm. And what this site has on the Child Street site is most of the roadway has parking just off the roadway. So there isn't a whole lot of berm comparatively. If you look at the parking versus the sidewalks.
Yeah, you're
and
parking
the
your
road.
cars in front of the houses.
Correct.
Directly off the street. so
Correct.
that You wouldn't have the
Right.
usual continuous.
Right, it's not like we're gonna have curb cuts and driveways for individual houses, because the entire length of the road is almost a driveway. So that's why we've asked for that waiver.
And your experience is that the 26-foot right of way is adequate?
Yes. I mean, no one's gonna come in here except for the residents of this, which is the reason that we put only a fire access at the adjoining neighborhood, so that only the fire department or police department or emergency services would be able to go through. Anyone else is just going here. And we found a narrower road actually keeps people going slower.
Thank you.
Jim?
So I noticed each residence has 2 parking spaces per residence, correct? You need to find a way to strategically place, again, EV charging pylons, wherever you do it, close to where the vehicles are parked. The residents can supply their charging cables. You just need the pylon. Because these cars are coming, and it'd be a shame to build this without any of these units having access to EV charging.
As long as the cost of those cars comes down, that would be great, because our residents are people who are having they're working, and affording a nice apartment is the most important thing in their lives. We would love to include any of that if it's required. I can have the engineers speak to that, but we'd certainly have the services that we could provide it, should it. But housing is the most important thing for us.
Right.
My thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, again, the purpose of this is to give them some sense prior to the TRC. This is not, a decision-making process.
Yeah, any feedback you can.
But then just like feedback from
Yeah,
in the consent. So I just want to start, I'm a huge proponent of affordable homes, and I know that Warren needs them a lot. And so the one thing I did notice is this property is zoned R40, which doesn't make sense when the surrounding neighborhood is an R10. And so I could absolutely get behind, making sure that the zoning of this is an R10. What I can't get behind is the multiple other things that are more like an R6 in a very family-oriented existing neighborhood where we're not even allowed to have multifamily zoned in an R10. And I think my biggest concern is really for the neighborhood and the very family-friendly walkable community that's already there. Because if we allow this, we're setting precedent to take one of the only kind of family-friendly niche neighborhoods and opening it up to these developments, because there's a lot of properties across that Childs Street and in that are large enough. And so we're going to see one application after another. And so now Childs Street is just going to be this condominium wall that then has cut the rest of us off from the area in the neighborhood. And I think it just doesn't fit in. And there's reasons for R10 zoning that I think really need to be considered to ensure that the neighborhood and the families that already live there are able to be maintained and have a nice community that they've purchased on purpose. There's a reason why the homes are purchased in this neighborhood and not in downtown, because we all wanted a family walkable neighborhood that doesn't have multifamily and things like that. The other thing that I have a really hard time with is that these type of developments make me so sad. And they make me so sad because we are essentially putting a label on people. And I don't like that. Why do you need to create a low income neighborhood within a neighborhood that already exists? Why can't you create a development that is integrated into the community that people can afford? And I think anybody in that area would say that the smaller homes are completely outpriced and it's ridiculous. And so we do need smaller homes, but I feel like it keeps saying like Penny Lane neighborhood, it's like a separate community for lower income. But why does that have to be the case? You know, nobody wants to be labeled. We need inclusive and equitable development that helps people who have families to feel good about who they are and where they live, not to be, oh, that Penny Lane development where, and that's unfortunately, well, that is not what affordability is. That is the perception and that is the stigma. And so that's really my problem, because it sticks out so much in a neighborhood that it's not consistent. Can't there be a way to do smaller starter homes for people that are integrated into the neighborhood that really give people an opportunity to immerse themselves in what's already there, instead of having this weird community of their own that doesn't match the rest?
So, Ms. Medeiros, I have to take exception to pretty much everything you've just said. I've been building affordable housing, if I may. Mr.
Yeah, no,
Chair.
I just want to, we don't want to have demonstrations on either
Yeah.
side. I find those disruptive, and so.
I totally agree.
So.
I do find it offensive because I've been in this business for 30 years and I've built affordable housing developments at every level. And and the East Bay CDC has as well. And what they continue to do is build integrated neighborhoods. They build, depending upon the funding that Rhode Island Housing and HUD through the different programs allow. And if you had gone down any of our developments, whether it's Solms Road, Palmer Point, and talked to any of those residents, they're really happy that they have a house. And they are families as well. And so, and they like to walk their neighborhood as well. And they like to walk around all the neighborhoods. So for you to say that you're sad for these people, that
What I'm saying is, I feel like it's being labeled. I feel like,
you're only the one labeling it.
but that's what people, I mean, I'm not the only one.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
labeled it.
We need,
My recommendation is to get back on track in terms of what we propose.
Thank you.
Continue on.
Thank you.
yeah, I mean,
I just have a question. Is there income restrictions on getting into these?
Yes, as I read you the income restrictions. Those are the maximum incomes that you can make. So for a two-person family, it's 46,440. For a three-person family, it's 52,260. And for a four-person family, it's $58,020 a year.
okay, Again, you know, if there's something relevant to the nature of the proposal as it stands, I'm willing to hear from someone here. This is not a public hearing. We're not making a decision here. This is a process by which we're able to see, and those who are interested can see. We would proceed to a technical review committee to review the specifics of the proposal, and then you would come before us. My understanding is with the preliminary and master plan and preliminary after TRC, if the TRC did not find anything incredibly egregious, you know, or something that couldn't be handled.
Yes.
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, is they need to file application formally. So this is a pre-application. They would get into the application and then the possibility of the technical review committee.
Correct. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. I would say the next step is the application, and we go to the technical review committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Liberty Street. This is 10 Liberty Street Partners LLC, the comprehensive permit, pre-application, 25-unit residential apartments. As a preliminary to this, as I noted earlier, we've had 4 informal technical review committee meetings regarding this proposal. Those were helpful in terms of helping the folks who are on that committee understand it. However, this is the formal pre-application to the board, and as such gives the board an opportunity to take a look at this. I've certainly looked at it a lot. But again, we're at this point, we're treating this to some degree as a new proposal. So I keep that in mind, you know, in terms of how this is being presented to the rest of the board, because I haven't shared with them, you know, what my feelings were about it, or, you know, our discussions about it. And again, the devil is in the details, so it's an overview specifically about the layouts. That's what I can stick with.
Understood. For the record, I'm attorney Bruce Cox here on behalf of Liberty Street Partners, John Lannon and Ron Morrow. Jim, you're over there, okay. They are the owners of this property. They are the local guys that bought this property with the intent of rehabilitating the nearly derelict Liberty Street School building. They have connections with the school. Ron attended, and his daughter attended this school. They have, you know, connections. They've engaged the Tom Principe of Principe Engineering as their engineer, have their plans, and a noted architect, Cordelia Dawson, to help preserve the school facade and the character of the school, as well as to help blend in the proposed building at the back side of the lot. We have been at 4 technical review meetings, and we have met we believe we've met everything, single question or request made at the technical review committee level, the fire, the police, so on and so forth. We have in your package, our full application demonstrated that we have full facilities at the site. They'll be rehabilitating the school to create 6 market units and 1 affordable unit. Now, these are for sale. These are not rentals. They're committed to sprinkling the school so that the existing fire escapes that are on the outside of the building don't fit, are actually being removed, which is in agreement with the fire chief. The new building in the back will have 12 market units and 6 affordables. So we're slightly over the 25% that is required. Melinda Lodge, Executive Director of the Community Land Trust of Rhode Island, has agreed to be our monitoring agent. You have in your packet the letter from her complimenting us on the fact that we're actually over the 25 level. Interesting in the project development of this is that these gentlemen are going to be building this. It's not a contractor outside of the town. They are going to be here on the site. This morning, John was on the phone with Rhode Island Housing explaining the cost estimates and such and why we're able to do this as local guys with no federal funding, no assistance. This is a local project. So next month, when we are here on combined master and preliminary, we'll be putting forward the evidentiary evidence by the engineer being able to answer any of your technical detail questions then. This is an introduction. In the application, you can see the dimensions of the site. It is 26,866 square feet. It is the school site with the backyard that's associated with there. We do have some list of the variances that are being requested on the plans by principal and principal. Among them are, we are in a village business zone, so we need to either use variance or a waiver, however you want to phrase it. So we are in putting an apartment complex in village business, which is where the waiver comes in. We're just a little over on our lot coverage. We're at 31.9 versus 30% coverage with a new building. The setbacks in the back and the side yards are 10 feet versus 20 feet. And that is the gist of most of the requests. We do have a density relief as required as set forth in the application in the plan. At this point, I think John Lannon can come forward and explain to you their intent and their goal and what they're trying to do here for the town of Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Thank you.
Excuse me, good evening. My name is John Lannon. Just got new hearing aids, so bear with me, they're bouncing right now. My partner is Ronnie Laurel. I think Bruce might have said that, but in case he didn't. Ronnie went to school there. My daughter Heidi went to school at Liberty Street. My first job was at the Wharf Tavern. I coached Babe Ruth baseball in town. I married a Warren girl. My daughter's in the Athletic Hall of Fame. My son is also in the Hall of Fame. So here we are. We're gonna build this. We'll stay here. I'll drive by it. If we promise you something, whatever we agree to, we'll hold to it. So basically, we bought the property about a year ago. I had met with then Planning Board Director Bob Ruley. He indicated what we might need to do with no tacit approval, obviously, or anything like that. We proceeded to buy the property and we began a design process. We took the initiative of having 4, I don't know if that's the record in Warren, but 4 TRC meetings already. We took input from every department head, some of like historic and some of the different groups that showed up. We tried to answer their questions. We met with most of the neighbors personally. We've taken input from them. We'll take more. We'll take input from you guys. We're just here to try to see this thing through. What you have before you is what we think works, given the size of the existing building and the height. We did look at the neighborhood. The front will have the brick facade to match the existing brick building, and the rear and the 2 gable ends will have clapboard, which matches the rear and side neighborhoods, we think. So I guess I can open up to questions. We didn't bring it in. This is a new process, this preliminary meeting type thing. I wasn't sure what to bring, so.
Well, I think what would be helpful to show, because there were some concerns at the previous TOCs relative to parking and access as a result of that. If you could point out how the parking, how you're.
I've got a clear sheet and it's brought to my attention as well that does show the parking, the drainage and the utility for overlaid on it. If you want, I'll hang up a pressure. It's the same sheet. They needed the utilities, like the cleaner read you guys. Is that all right?
Sure. We do have, yeah, it's a lot of, it's this one that we received.
Yes, that was a principally, and as
Right.
as John said, they overlaid the utilities on the perimeter parking. It's the basic layout of the parking is perimeter parking on both, on the western side of the lot and then in front of the new building.
The concerns, two of the concerns that were at the TRC, apart from the department heads who were there, were the parking, also the preservation of two trees at the entrance to the school, and how that would be impacted by the roads going in and the parking. So we can just address
So
that.
basically, we have 28 total spots, one of them being a handicap spot. We had the egress for the fire department, the chief had requested a turning radius would be established. They're shown here along with the radius in the back. We can make the turning radiuses for the apparatus that he asked us to make the radiuses work for. Parking comes down it's going to be the west side of the property. It also comes across the rear building, and there's 8 spots in the front of the existing building with a new walkway out to what would be a sidewalk.
On the left side, the
The
western
west
side,
side.
those slots, how many are there on that?
On that side, sort of 9 through 20, that would be 11, I think.
And those are all parallel parking
Yes,
spots.
it's all parallel parking, the last one being very long, we had it done by an engineer, Irvin spotted actually the first thing, the person that Irvin did that spot. Ironically, Allison Ring who preceded him, noticed the same thing. This will be a drive-in spot, it's very easy, it's very long, and we just noticed it, we had kind of a tight parallel park, so we made that one work, so it's legitimately, it's the 28 that we listed.
And again, the turning radius that you noted, as you know, we discussed at the TRCs, that will take out at least one of those trees, if not both.
Eventually, both trees will go, or we did address that with the, I can't remember which group that was, the linden trees, but we did offer to replace them in kind, either Birds Hill Park or James Mills Park, anywhere they wanted, maybe we do a 4-for-2 swap, if they both had to go. We'll certainly, make up for it somewhere. We bought the thing a year ago. Some developers would come in and clear the place out and then deal with the repercussions later. We left the trees, they're up for discussion. We left it up to the fire chief if it could have worked. I think parking is important, but safety, I have a son who's going to be a chief in Providence very shortly. We all respect our fire departments. They need to get in.
Questions? Do you have an idea what, these are all condominiums, correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
So do you have an idea what the market rate is and what the affordable rate is for the condominiums?
I do, we have a monitoring agency from Pawtucket, and they're gonna be handling this. They even monitor the whole thing for a fee. The retail of the units was. Wasn't sure if I need this, but maybe I did, so. Thank you for asking the question.
I'm glad you're prepared.
So the. Right, so, here. So you have 3 one-bedroom units, and the sale price of those 3 one-bedroom units will be $174,209, with a buyer's maximum income of $65,500. And then you have 4 no, that's the wrong page. You have 4 two-bedroom units. Those are at a retail of $252,623 with a buyer's maximum income of $95,400.
And then market rate would be.
Sorry.
Those are the
market
affordable
rate.
ones?
Market rates are going to be higher, but it's going to be market.
No, I know that,
That's right.
but
These are obviously,
some sense
the
of,
market moves every day, but per what we're working with around housing right now. So your markets on the one-bedroom units, they're the same square footage, but those will be 249. And I don't know if you need this, but that income the least you'd need to be able to make would be 68,472. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but.
For a market rate apartment?
Yeah.
There's an income restriction on a market rate apartment?
No.
No, there's not any
Financial analysis.
It was.
It's just part of the analysis.
Box and roof, we filled it out.
I see.
That was. I think that might be valid, that you would have to make that to qualify for that mortgage. I think that's what they meant by that. So if you make 68K, you could do 249, and I got this from the agency. I'm not a financial.
And you're, so you're selling these units and each unit would have one assigned parking space?
That is correct.
Questions? Anyone?
No.
Matt? Anyone?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, again, I know that this, it to some degree, this is brought about by the change in planners.
We understand we're in between and these things happen.
And again, I think that it has been helpful. One of the things we also discussed was the fact that parking is tight here. To parallel park, and then have a plow come down, that's, obviously going to be your concern, not the town's. But
That is correct. Snow removal is actually
it's-
removed from the site.
snow removal is tricky. I mean, when you're thinking about parallel parked cars and then bringing a plow in there or something to remove the snow.
Excavation equipment that Mr.
Um,
Lennon already has.
that-
That's correct.
We had talked about the possibility of purchasing land from the East Bay Development Corporation, which is immediately adjacent. You look at you see the square there on the, so above that area, that whole area is owned by East Bay. It's empty. It's currently unbuilded, it's not. Have you had any further discussions?
While I'd like to have this judged, obviously, on the merits that we're presenting, we were in round two with them. We went from Corey Guglietta, who's a property manager. We're dealing with a board member now called, her name is Julie Shalou. She has our plan and she has an open-ended offer, and she's bringing it she wasn't sure if you can make it to the next board meeting, but probably the one after. She disclosed that they were probably moving a couple of parcels of real estate in other parts of the state. But this would make sense financially for them because they don't need the land. And she happens to be in the real estate business somehow. And she kind of got it right away. Like, that wouldn't be a bad thing for that.
So I don't follow. You're talking about for extra parking?
Yeah.
Offset?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Like, to be clear, we wouldn't be buying this to gain one unit
Yeah.
or anything.
It would be for parking, to
Yeah.
make it more, so that we're not talking about, 11 spots where you have to parallel park after you spend $200,000 for.
I thought you were trying to dump the snow over the fence.
No.
No, so just quickly, we did have the 4 TRCs and we addressed the fire chief with the egress and the radiuses. We did increase, we found at the time we had 24 parking spots. We did increase it to 28. The rear building was reduced. It was reduced, the footprint was reduced by 1,072 feet. And the total living space was reduced by 3,216. We added one additional affordable unit to total 7. I think the requirement was 6. So we did get one more in there. The condo docks will be written to require all snow be removed from the site and disposed of properly within 24 hours. We added a painted egress path from Liberty Street to get to that rear building, with the hashes, somebody drives over it. We added 2 dumpster locations per another request. There were some additional drawings which we provided. That parking spot 20 was validated by an engineer. And we've added some green space on the west side between the walkway and the building. So these were the results of the 4 TRCs. And if there's a 5th, then
How many total bedrooms in both units then?
sorry.
I'm sorry, how many total bedrooms in each unit or combined, like if you kind of added them
Total
all up?
2 bedrooms.
Total of 2 bedrooms, I'm sorry.
Or just like all the bedrooms combined?
That's on package, your package, number
So
9.
it'd be 25 bedrooms,
20.
7 of them are ones, so that's.
Here we go.
18
bedrooms.
twos And 7 ones.
Wow.
So you have a spot per bedroom. That's what's-
70 in October.
If you go to your packet, actually the unit tabulation is package, tab number 9.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just kind of adding up like at least one parking spot per bedroom then.
Okay, again, that piece of land, I know
I stare at it regularly.
it would, I think also potentially lead to the preservation of those 2 trees, should that.
The trees are, the issue of the trees is not just parking, it's also fire.
Oh, I know, it's the.
That's the
egress.
determining factor.
Yeah,
there.
for the fire department.
I mean,
Yeah.
quite honestly, I've been in this game a little bit once in a while. You see me for the last 30 years, and I've had clients where I say, I look at trees like that in their side yard where they want to get an addition onto their house. And I tell them, take that tree down before we apply. And in this instance, I looked at those trees and I said, guys, those are 3-foot diameter trees. There are going to be problems.
Yeah.
You really should look at taking them down. And they said, we'll look at it, but they didn't do it. They
No, and-
didn't advise,
and
didn't listen to their attorney. Big mistake.
They've, to your credit, you've dealt in very good faith with the discussions and with the objections brought up. Again, it's, so I think, once more into the breach for the 5th TRC. But
By the record, I'll think better.
Yeah.
It's fine with us.
Okay.
Work with you.
all right, so, and then, again, it would be preliminary and master.
Combined
plan,
master and hopefully administrative.
Following the
final.
TRC.
And it's public hearing tossed into that too.
Public
That is-
hearing after the TRC. The
Right.
TRC is not designed as a public hearing. We've had, the last time there was a little bit more going on than should have been going on in terms of what.
It was active.
Yeah. well,
We have a good turnout in the afternoon meeting. but you want-
So we'll be seeing you shortly.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So, a motion. Okay. I'll make that motion to defer the application to the technical review committee. Second, Brett Bovine, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay. Our next order of business is to get to the comprehensive plan. First element, recreation and open space. We'll give this, hey, Allison. I'll give them a few minutes to clear this out.
Hey, Fred, I'm curious on the agenda. What is item 7? It says public comment.
I think they just left it there just in case she didn't want it. Public comment, not public comment. Oh, it's like other matters that they.
Okay, but it wasn't on the things that we were just talking about.
No, it's not. I mean, it's somewhat left to the discretion of the chair whether or not, you allow it. And again, I think, in Ashley's case, she represented a point of view that is there for the neighborhood. And that was, it seemed that that was sufficient in terms of, whoever else wanted to speak, but that was, I didn't see anybody else itching to speak.
Each of those applications with the warrants and public hearings, so then that's where it's like.
Yeah.
On that, it generally based on being open and transparent like issues that we start to know about down here, but it's Supreme Court is every single agenda has to follow upon.
Anybody have anything to say? Oh, you're gone. Gee. So the first element, once again, Allison, thank you for all your work. I mean, this has been a long process but very rewarding personally for me working with you on this. It's been fantastic, particularly having been working on this for the last 15 years. It feels like, but we're approaching the finish line in that we want to get this stuff to the statewide planning, get it back from them, and then move to a meeting with the town council. So we're there. Recreation and open space, the goals, everybody have those available. This we discussed last time. Not in detail.
Yeah, so there's some minor changes based on the conversation from the special meeting that was held a couple of weeks back. So I can just go over the changes. So whatever was shown in red previously, has been incorporated. And so anything that has been changed based on the input from last meeting is shown in red and underlined. So I'll just highlight those changes quickly to just let you know that those comments were incorporated. One being the reestablishment of the open space bond fund. That was one of the implementation actions that was added. The concept of a flash park was also incorporated as an action item under AR 08. I did notice a typo in there. Sorry about that, but yeah, so underserved parts of Warren. So trying to incorporate recreational amenities, throughout the town, and one being a splash park.
Well, that just undeserved would be those folks.
That's,
who live by the
well,
water.
that's why I noticed that.
If
that
they've
was
got water
unfortunate.
nearby, they don't need it.
It's an unfortunate typo, so I will fix that. And then broadening that policy, because originally the policy was, focusing on the market to Medicom, saying how Medicom, project area was lacking in recreational amenities, but broadening that, say, well, there may be other areas as well that could benefit from new recreational assets. So including that action item under that policy. And there seemed to be a consensus of the planning board that new recreational fields, specifically, athletic fields, may not be needed, and to reevaluate the recreation and open space master plan, having been, 5 years ago that was prepared. So you'll notice some modifications to the policy and implementation actions, as well as some changes in the narrative to reflect that update and that preference of the board. So taking away the language, investing in new and striking new investments in athletic fields, speaking to, maybe new recreational programs and activities, and conducting a survey, reevaluating the need for new athletic fields. So I believe that's where the planning board was.
Yeah, so we took it out of the policy, invest in diverse opportunities for passive as opposed to putting in the new, but then saying, if you want to talk about new, give us the justification for it.
Right, I like that. I thought the ARO 16 is good, what you put in there. Because if we didn't have the actual report before us to determine whether it was like a legitimate need, and we had rumor that there was one out there, it would be hard to like say, we should just scrap it. You know,
It was, yeah,
It's
no,
good
we
to
can
say it,
certainly
yeah.
circulate, yeah, that plan, the town has it, I don't know if it's probably on the website, but we have the full plan, if the planning board wants to look at the full recommendations, but what I did was, yeah, it's referenced in the plan and some of the narrative. That plan was used to inform some of this, narrative included in the comp plan element.
Can we arrange to have that sent electronically to the members, the recreation plan? This doesn't impact at all getting this thing to statewide planning. But I think it would be helpful to look at it, just so you're familiar with. The same may be true of the harbor management plan, for example, if that came through, you know, that we would be referencing something that I believe that plan may have a number of places that are identified as potential areas for new athletic fields, for example. So we want to make sure that not only are we talking about it here, but we understand if there's something within that that we can address as either the planning board or as residents of Warren.
The
Great.
other significant area of discussion and change within the revised language is, well, one, this is minor, but within Warren Town Beach, the paragraph here incorporating some language just to say that the town is developing that new recreational facility of several
All right.
buildings to offer, you know, more amenities near Town Beach and Grosse Hill Park. So with the additional bathrooms, concession stand, office and storage space. So hopefully I reflected that accurately. Let me know if there's anything additional or to be corrected in regards to that project's current status. The other area where there's a significant change was related to the rights of way to the shore. So we had a lot of discussion on that. And it was recommended to, you know, maybe put it together in a more of a table format. So I did that. I went on CRMC's online mapper. These are the CRMC identified, you know, rights of way to the shore. I kept it pretty simple. I didn't add too much narrative as far as, you know, the current condition, or I know we talked about putting in some where there's parking, some not. So if there is that desire to add further details on those, they're shown on the recreation map that's in the comp plan. There's points, all of those points are reflected on the map and they're listed here. We have action items related to them and policies, but one question I had, it had been brought up about Maple Road right away. Talking about there's a parking town kayak rack. I saw the location of it, but for some reason it's not on the CRMC. It's not, is it not a CRMC?
They've designated it yet as a CRMC,
There is a right-of-way sign there.
but it's
So Bridge Street and Maple Street are definitely public access and the road areas. The town just received its CRMC permit last week. And we'll be proceeding with our funding source from Infrastructure Bank to do the improvements. We'll be going out to bid and doing the improvements. To
but that's Maple Street.
You're talking
not- I'm
about
talking
Warren
Maple
and
Street.
Maple and Bridge. What am I?
Right.
So
The Maple
Maple
Road
Road.
is on the other side of the town.
Sorry,
It's in the red.
I didn't hear Maple.
It did have a sign indicating that it was a CRMC right of way,
interesting.
but if it's not on the map, actually, we should probably have a discussion of Tony, you know, on this. One thing I would like to see here is identifying these without indicating that there's limited parking could create problems if this is part of it. For example, the Maple Road right-of-way has 2 parking spots, correct?
They're,
But they're not town parking spots. They're
Well,
like, they're owned by the conservative.
Right, but it says has parking, so if I
Right.
were to read that, I'd say,
But
okay,
it's
well,
available for the public, is that?
those 2
Yeah,
spots.
theoretically, but I don't mean, I don't know, do they have the, I mean, if they own it, they could change that, like.
Well,
If
so
they
that's
want-
my question, is
that's
I
right.
don't know what this property is, so it's.
I was under the impression that it was a right of way, but
The
if it's not,
description of it says between lots, 2 different
Right.
lots, so that would indicate it's some sort of right of way.
Right.
But what is a conservation group that's involved?
Well, so the way this property at Indian Maple Road, if there is the right of way, which,
Yeah.
and I'm of the same understanding as Rick on this, that there is the CRMC right of way, because they always used to refer to down on the point, there's 2, one in the Twisted Road and one in the Maple. And then, but next to the right of way is some property owned by the conservatorship.
oh, the land trust.
The land trust, yeah, and so, and they have authorized the creation of some parking. So I don't know if I don't know how
Yeah.
the land trust works in the sense that like, if we put that in our plan as confirmed, is it appropriate to do that? I mean, or is it?
Well, what's the question? We have,
well, I
Because
think
it's
it,
not like town parking,
right.
it's some other form of
well,
parking.
there is theoretically parking on the road there as
No,
well. Theoretically.
no, well, theoretically is not what we're dealing with. It's not there, that road is not appropriate and the town has not established parking there. So I would not, and that's true of Shore Drive, all of those Shore Drive ones. The parking there is in fact, I believe that even CRMC says very limited parking or, because it's all residences there. The one that leads to that right of way is a dirt road that is marked no parking. Whether those signs are legitimate or not remains to be seen, but that was something that Bob really was working on, the whole parking thing. So what I think we need to say is that while there are these rights of way, parking is limited at all of these. I don't know any of these spots where there's significant public parking available. So I'd like to see that if it's, unless anybody has an objection. I mean, it doesn't mean they're open, you can get to them, you ride a bicycle, you can go to any of these things if
I
you,
mean, it's generically saying that parking is limited, but again, I just don't wanna, well, more detail can be offered, but it's a little bit of a project, so I don't know the status unless I went to these sites.
yeah, no, I would say as a general statement, all of these right of ways have very limited parking. If, at all, I mean. It doesn't have to be each one specific.
Yeah, because again, we don't wanna look, I don't want the appearance to be we're discouraging people to utilize this. So, I can craft something with that notation.
Yeah,
Again,
I mean,
we're not-
I get where you're going. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the Tewissa Point Road one, there's really no place to park. It's a road that goes down, it's not even taken care of by the town. It looks like, the Amseo Beach Landing, there are potholes like you wouldn't believe there.
And it's literally walls on the side of the road, like you
Yeah.
couldn't park, two cars cannot go on it, it's a 1-lane road.
And it's a good access,
And
frankly, the town has just not done, I mean, this is what I believe Herb's saying, there's money there for Maple and Beach Street or Bridge where the town may do some work, but to date, the town has not done anything in terms of addressing access, car access.
What are those projects that are on those 2 right of ways? Is it like,
honestly, I'm not sure what the work is that's going to be done at the end of Maple and Bridge Streets, but it's intended to improve the endpoints for end of road. We just got a CRMC permit. The DPW director is going to be pulling together the bid documents, and then it will go out to bid for the next construction season, meaning 2024.
So is it like removing some of the pavement, like an end of road retrofit? I think we described in other parts
Yeah.
of the plan. Yeah.
I believe so, yes. And
Yeah,
then
okay.
that one was supposed to have Harris Ave as part of it, but Harris Ave is not as far along as the Maple and Bridge Street area of town.
Okay. And then are there any other notable like needs or assets that could be highlighted amongst these, I looked at the pictures of each that are on the CRMC website, okay, so there might be a bench at one, or there's a kayak rack at one, but those aren't, what, any other projects or was the status of them generally they all look pretty clear based on the photos that were.
There are, yeah, I mean, most of them are marked. They
Yeah.
did have, there are, I think, even more markers that the town has never put up. Those stone ones. I heard anecdotally that they're sitting somewhere. Again, I wouldn't wanna, like, if you look at those Shore Drive ones, there's 4 on Shore Drive alone. The drive down Shore Drive, the houses are on top of each other. These right-of-ways go between 2 houses, and the streets there are less than 26 feet wide. So there's really no place to park a car. That, however, if you drive a bike down there, you can access it. If you live in the area, most of those things like the kayak rack that is at the end of Maple Road, I think most of the kayaks are people who live within walking distance of where the rack is at this point.
Right.
And that's generally how those kayak racks work in Bristol, for example.
Yeah.
They're set up but they're not set up with parking per se. They're set up so that people have a place to access the water.
It's clear that they were intended for foot traffic. And so like, I don't think that there's anything inappropriate in like indicating that their design and purpose is not for driving traffic.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just,
okay, I can make that notation.
I mean, I think that's like, a nature that goes with right of ways anyway. They go down the shore because they're like always cut throughs all over the place that sometimes they're.
I mean, they exist, which is great, which is, it's like, it's not fighting that. The problem is that there have been some serious disagreements over people parking on people's lawns, to access that. I mean, that is not a God-given right, And by the way, Article 1, Section 17 of the Rhode Island Constitution, I know it backwards and forwards, and that is all about walking along the shore, gathering seaweed and fishing. Doesn't say anything about boom boxes or beach chairs. And yet that's one of the things that's going on right now with that recent legislation. But this is lateral access we're talking about, not horizontal, which is what that recent legislation covered.
A minor comment on, you have the language on page 13. You have the list.
Which page?
So on page, what page am I on? I don't know, it says CRMC rights of way to the shore.
Yeah.
It's the thing we're talking about, and then it's
Yeah,
got the
page-
table.
yeah.
And then on page 15, you have a nice little paragraph that says like, it talks under the reports and online resources. That's where you say that the, there's the website.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that's the only place you can identify it, but as you're talking about parking and stuff like that, I mean, if this language were lifted up to
Yeah,
there, maybe it would, my other comment is, when I go to ArcGIS, I get how that's it, but, when I go to ArcGIS, it's just like log in. It's not actually that. So there's actually like crmc.ri.gov/maps.html. That gets you to like point you one click away. The actual URL for that map is atrocious. But if it's just this crmc.ri.gov front slash maps.html, I think that would direct
Okay.
people. Then.
Yeah, I did think about moving that into, because of that language into the actual section rather than just within the references. So I think I'll do that and then, yeah, remove that arcgis.com. There's a link, like if you were looking at the original PDF and you click on it, bring
Oh,
it
was it
directly
made-
there.
I see.
But that should be taking out, yeah, I'll remove that arcgis.com language, because otherwise people might, type it in.
I love
Yeah.
I love having a URL there.
The link does take you directly to that,
Yeah.
that mapper, but that language is confusing there. Okay.
I can send you that. It's interesting.
Any other comments on the rec and open space?
On that page 18 again, get out, take Windmill Hill Golf Course out of there.
That's not in there anymore. The
Oh, it's
table-
on mine.
I don't know what page 18 is, so this,
It's the one that lists,
yeah,
doesn't have a title. It's just, it's the last page of the recreational pack.
that's the older version.
Okay.
This is September 22nd, you're looking at date?
That chart.
Yeah. Yeah, I removed that from the element. That was kind of a working document to help identify sites to then be mapped. So that table was like a working table to make sure I had all the sites reflected in the map, like an inventory table. So at this point, I've just removed it from the, having that within the plan. And the town can have a table with the details of the plan, but there were a lot of details that were missing, and to identify, like those columns that are highlighted. We can work on completing that table if you want a final document. In there, yeah, like that is. where-
The outdoor recreation, the outdoor recreation map, R1. And then you go down, there's another
I
map.
haven't submitted any revised maps from last week. like,
Okay.
From 9/11, so any mapping that was included in your packet is what was before you, for the last special meeting, so.
Okay.
I know map R1,
And then the one
there
below it.
were, so please, let me know if there's any changes, I know. Mike,
Yeah,
you
just
had
that's
submitted-
the key farm issue, the undeveloped. Because it
Yes.
looks like the Manchester farm is in a dark brown. As the one is up near Birchmont Road. I don't know the key there. I can't see it. The map below R1.
Is what you're looking.
Map R1.
Map R1 outdoor recreation, town of Warren, Rhode
Bert
Island.
has it up on the screen, so.
Comprehensive
Right now?
plan. Yeah, now you go one below that. Scroll down. From that.
To the next map.
Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
this is
Hold on.
I don't know what it is.
protected open space probably.
Yes, that one. Okay, so that's the one where we still need privately owned protected open space.
Well, it's on there, but you're saying there's lots that are missing that need to be added.
Yeah,
Privately owned protected.
yeah,
open space.
that's that's the one where the key farm off Barton and Long Lane.
Go back up on that map. Okay, so that one we're moving to natural resources.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that. So for rec and open space, it'll just be this one map outdoor recreation. And that again has, you can see here, the CRMC right of ways, and then a table that lists 23 different recreational sites, and the names of them with a number key here. The bike path and proposed potential locations. I know, Mike, you said Hale Farm, we add the word preserve to it, to the name of it. Was that one of your notes?
Which,
A handwritten note. Hale Farm Preserve, is that the official?
Oh, yeah,
name?
that's a hill from the,
Yeah, so I have that as a correction.
yeah, because those privately owned properties that are agriculture are not recreation. I mean,
Right, this is supposed to be focused on
right, so that,
really public,
that second map
Sites.
that we were just looking at really is more appropriate for the land use. Or
it's, there'll be a natural resource.
natural resource,
Yeah,
that's what I'm sorry.
Open space
Yep.
map.
Okay,
So, yeah, the outdoor recreation map, there might be property that is not, like, for example, the Audubon, because they allow for
Yeah.
this trail that the
Yeah.
public can utilize, but yeah, we don't reflect any, like, open, because some conserved land doesn't allow for public access.
okay, well then, given the recommendations for changes, Herb, do you feel like you and Allison can just flesh this out and send it off to statewide at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
So I'll move that we transmit this to a statewide plan.
with the recommendations regarding, parking specifically to CRMC, but all the rest of the recommendations were accepted. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next one is land use.
Okay, so land use, some of the changes incorporated from last meeting, the goal, there was a comment to add not just a place to live, but a desirable place to work as well, so we might add and work into that goal. Mapping, there's been, all three maps are in the process of being updated, so the existing land use map that was causing some frustration with what was reflected there, confusion, that layer, it's going to be mapped differently. So it's the same database, but I can recategorize them. I talked to statewide planning, and so certain things will be grouped together, and that category that was just mixed urban land, whatever that was, we weren't sure what that was, that's going to be gone. So close to finishing that up, and that will look very different.
Great. That was
the-
that little thing in the middle of Water Rower too.
Oh, well, so okay, so the existing land use is that layer, that's the state's layer that's based off of aerial photography
Right.
that had shown some land use category that was confused. It said mixed urban land, but it was on a lot of the towns, it's like private recreational sites. So that'll be displayed differently. The zoning, existing zoning, we had the question about that GB district, and so the town went through recent zoning amendments, a list of those. So I updated Water Rower and some other properties I noticed had not been updated in the GIS, including Liberty Street School. And so that is the zoning, GIS zoning layer needed some updates, so we're still trying to identify. There might be some others in recent years. So once that list is finalized, I can finalize the existing zoning map.
Okay,
And then we can finalize the future land use map, because then we'll know which, if any of those are inconsistent and then need to be reflected. So basically, I think that GB is not GB, it's B, was based on the documents I was given. It just was the term general business kind of common, so I think it was in that language in the petition, but correct, or you would call it B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yep.
business, it's just that it was used, general business term was used, so it's not necessarily, it's not a different zoning district, it would fall under the same zoning district as
Great.
B. So I think that cleans up that concern we had, that
Yep.
goes away. Yeah, so we're just gonna clean up those, make sure it's accurate, and so there shouldn't be any big changes to future land use map based on.
had they evaluate the local regulations and identify strategies. I'm sorry, am I jumping?
Yeah, no, I think I'm just trying to think of that, like policy changes to those.
analysis. I don't think
Yeah.
that little GB/B parcel would be enough to hold up. If that's just something that we're clarifying, these guys could. still
Yeah,
send it off to the
right,
state,
absolutely.
And we'll just make the change as applicable when we go through.
Yeah, like I think
Yeah.
that information helps that. Yeah, if there were issues there, like the question goes away whether or not rezoning is needed because it is accurate, the zoning for that area, and you wouldn't need to rezone or change the future land use, so.
But the state's
Yeah.
review isn't gonna
Oh,
pick up on any of
no,
that.
no,
you know?
it's already been updated on the map,
Yeah.
I just, so.
Okay,
So let's see, for land use implementation actions, policy changes from the last meeting, so added an action, there was some discussion in the narrative as well, we had spoke about the concern as far as how height is measured in flood zone, so, evaluating local regulations to see if there's some strategies that need to be put.
yeah,
in
I mean, I
place
like the
to
way you've written it. It's,
mitigate
it's
that.
along the shoreline, so it's inconsistent with traditional scale and height. I mean, I think, again, it's like we're looking for something that we could potentially go to zoning with and say, what's reasonable here, within an area that doesn't seem to have the kind of protections that we'd like to have potentially.
The other action item that was added since the last meeting was in regards to the rural business zoning district. Davison was at that last meeting and, raising some concerns with the idea of rezoning that area, allowing for certain uses, no longer without a special use permit. So just tried to incorporate some more language to ensure that we still want to, make
Yeah.
sure it's a pleasing aesthetically pleasing gateway to the town. We're not trying to allow for general business uses in that area, that it would be, select targeted, types of businesses. So that language in the action and as well as within the narrative, talking about, that there are,
Okay, the next change I see here would be down where the neighborhood contained, the Parker Mill neighborhood,
yes,
that where we.
again, yeah, part of the discussion raised that, there are historic structures in that neighborhood, possibly, if you were developing any design standards there and taking that into consideration, with any zoning amendments or special district plans. And then the comment about, focusing more attention to the neighborhood, marketing it, having events there, attracting businesses and, residents and visitors to the areas.
Oh, so is it okay on page 4 there that it still says market to Medicom plan? Because I know they were a little touchy about
Okay.
that.
Something, okay, page 4, market to medical.
So it says like introduction, and I know what you're talking, but I'm like, because above it says plan, the market to Medicom project area, I'm like, should that just say market to budget project area, just so that, I just know they were a little bit like, they didn't like the whole.
Where, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
So there's the introduction, it's on,
Introduction.
yeah, and then below it just talks about the market to Medicom plan, and I just remember you said that statewide planning wasn't 100%. I didn't know if that would just throw them off a bit.
Too
because-
much, so the reference to the market to Medicom in the introduction.
Well, if I'm
Much of a
correct
focus.
here,
More the title, like,
yeah,
yeah,
you're saying it's market to Medicom plan as though it's something that is happening, whereas it's more of a project.
yeah, I was just wondering if that was gonna like throw them off again, and maybe we should just, streamline a bit, call it a plan instead of
Plan
or a
or
project instead of a plan,
Proposal
so
or
they don't.
project.
I mean, you know what I mean? I just know that was the one thing they threw, why they wanted us to review it again. And I just, figured.
Yeah, let me look through, I mean, I think in every, it's still the focus or, throughout every element, there is a market to Medicom section, like
Yeah.
describing how that plan, well, those elements and the goals and policies
Yeah,
our
well,
chief
I guess the question is, were they objecting to the language, Market Medicom plan?
No, they're objecting to
The
only focusing
hyper-focus.
that geographic part of the town and not addressing other parts of town.
Right.
So that was the concern. So you can have as much as you want on Market Medicom, as long as you also talk about other neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Which we were doing anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I'm
I just
not
was like, I don't
sure.
think it's just throw
by-
back.
No, I mean, I'm happy to vote. I mean, whatever, like somebody's gonna watch this or whatever, like someday, that's great. Hello, like, we're not hyper focused.
Yeah,
It's an irrational criticism and, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if it satisfies people to paint over this and use language that, gets it to pass without actually doing anything different, then we'll do it.
yeah, but it sounds like we don't need to. By facilitating a marketing program to stimulate investments. I'm not sure what that means. The town could bring more attention to the neighborhood, similar to Cutler Mills.
Are you in the Parker plan or?
Yeah, back on
Okay,
page 6. So,
Parker
yeah, I
Mills.
mean, I struggled with this a little bit, like what is the municipal role here? You know, a lot of times there might be a business community organization that takes on that role.
Yeah, like the Better Business Bureau or something like that, or Economic Development Council, or. I mean, I don't know who would be responsible for something like
Yeah.
that.
Chamber of Commerce.
I mean, I think the concern there is that you've got an area that is another gateway to the town that is suffering from lack of attention. And as a result, it has gotten pretty crummy looking in certain areas. And it feels like nobody's really paid much attention to what's going on there. And I think that was the intent was, is there some way of focusing town attention in this area to say this is important and not just a backwater?
I mean, could you borrow any language from that ALU 17? Because it talks about it's talking specifically about zoning, but you get that nice language that says chairman design controls are in place that any development or redevelopment promotes an aesthetically pleasing gateway to the town.
Yeah,
Copy pasted there somehow.
yeah, something like that, any
Yeah.
work on, yeah.
But I don't know what the impetus would be, because we're not talking about changing the zoning or anything like that, right? Is there an action there, I guess?
Well, that's,
See, the action is. We had an action in the transportation element and. Historic, right? We had, I know it's already in 2 places talking about like focusing more on the circulation.
yeah,
not
this
necessarily
was
rezoning.
really more about,
And maybe, beyond that as well, I think that's why it's in land use, because there might be, let's see, we're talking about, yes, more streetscape improvements beyond the circulation, but there could be larger plans to revitalize the neighborhood, investments in affordable housing. I don't know if there's a need for rezoning, and that was one question I did have. I did notice in the existing zoning, there were in the list of zoning districts, special district is one, and I know that is the Torster site, but then it also says Parker Mill. So is it exclusive to just the Parker Mill site? And then, so that's already in place, like special district zoning there?
Yeah, I did notice that on the GIS map. That there's already some type, I think, of overlay that encompasses that area.
I'd leave out that last sentence.
Yeah,
The town could also bring more attention, because
Yeah.
it's just, I think.
too
it-
much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Allison, maybe
Yes.
something could be added in that just sort of speaks to saying that for as for the next iteration of the comprehensive plan, that the town could identify planning areas, just to break into the town into a couple different areas like Market to Metacom, Parker Mill area, and to identify individual planning schemes or concepts, or just have some discussion about those particular areas, for things like infrastructure investment, applicable zoning regulations, that just a sort of a laundry list of things to consider for those particular areas that are specialized to those areas and their value.
Yeah, I think the town, there's big facade improvement programs and grant programs and things like that, that the town could support working with area as well as downtown, just.
I'm trying to get at, not watering down the Market to Metacom, but also just sort of doing something that I think is gonna be a little bit more embracing for the state, but I think also important for the town, because there are other areas of town that, are not in the Market to Metacom area or what have you.
Well, that whole Cutler Mill area, I mean, this thing with the Croat Street, has the potential to really kind of transform that area.
Right.
Um,
And that's it, whether, like charrettes in the future, like, hey,
Yeah.
we just plunked the residential development in the middle of the manufacturing district. Is
What do you
this
think?
what we should have done, right? Or should we be doing something like that? to
Yeah.
put a positive spin on it, right?
And I guess that kind of goes with my question here, special district, your current zoning district, for special district. Now that the American Tourist Site's been developed, like, is that zoning district does that still stay in place? With that and the Parker Mill, and because we're talking now that was what was
in the future, I think,
previously on your future, like that was your special district that needed planning, that's now been developed.
Right.
Now you're talking about other areas that need that special district
Right.
designation.
And what I'm just trying to do is drop hints for the future planning boards to say, so if they pick up on it, that here was a suggestion of this planning board for future ones to take a look at.
Herb, have you talked to, what's his name? What are we? Am I blanking on? Oh, okay.
Peter?
Peter King, yeah.
I haven't had the opportunity to sit down.
Just because it'd be, interesting to see what he's thinking with Parker Mill, because then that could be, because he bought it as a way to help the town. And
Mhm.
so I know he has plans, but it's a lot, but with a mill like that, there are more national and historic and different types of preservations and tax things that can be leveraged with facilities like that, working with the state and stuff like that. So if that's something he's interested in, we might want to
Yeah.
include that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I think, we're talking Parker Mills, Cutler
Yeah, I
Mills,
just. I
those
didn't
are
get that.
the areas of particular interest for future investigation in terms of zoning and
Yeah, so
you know,
that, and that
development.
was, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a question, and then it'll come up in economic
Yeah.
development, but yeah, like what are, is the current zoning facilitating the development, future
Right.
development that's desired? Does there need to be rezoning? Is this special?
yeah, I mean, I think the idea of
Flexible
charrettes
enough,
are,
these are, and here's your opportunity to say something. If it isn't, put it down as an action item that it needs to be changed or.
So you're saying we don't have to make the decision, we can just identify as an action that rezoning should be evaluated? Kick the can.
If it, if it does, that's my question. I don't. This
Makes sense to me.
special district language, are
Yeah, I
the
think-
mills need rezoning, or is the current zoning flexible enough to allow for redevelopment?
yeah, I mean, I think you have to discuss that, because if there's a special zone that's been
Yeah.
established for these places, nobody's done anything with it, I mean, it's not been acted upon, so I think it should be an action. Okay. Commercial design standards. What were you think? It says additional text to be added in this section,
For commercial design standards, hang on,
or is that
where
the
are we?
additional text that's in the red?
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, it's just
Oh,
below.
I see you. Okay, waterfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, page 6. That was there. I started adding language based on the conversation last meeting. There was the conversation generically about all along the shoreline, the height of structures, but I think when I had put the waterfront as a placeholder there, I was thinking more discussion as to like the waterfront district and any land use considerations for that. So added in a little language there regarding the working waterfront and businesses and promoting access. I just felt like it needed, I just have 2 paragraphs here and they're not really tied. They're kind of separate thoughts. So I just wanted
But they're
to
both-
build upon it.
Yeah, it's waterfront. There's 2 different
Yeah.
kinds of waterfront,
Yeah.
which is, I think, important to know. That you've got and I mean, the working waterfront over the last 25 years has almost ceased to exist. It's when Luther Blount bought all the land along there, the idea was to preserve those places as, Chomp is now where a boat building operation was. The yacht club was another place that was a working waterfront kind of place. So this almost sounds like the previous comprehensive plan. I mean, you want to preserve right now the remaining working waterfront and water dependent businesses is essential. We've already lost a number of those. I remember somebody wanted to build a restaurant where the yacht club is now, and because it wasn't water dependent, we fought it off. But the hearing room was filled with people trying to get this to be a restaurant, and that was preserved, but not much else has been. And I remember the restaurant owner's argument is, I'm going to be serving seafood.
Again, that's a good example of what I was trying to describe earlier, is that if we carve up areas of town that we need some additional discussion on, decisions to be made, pack the room for a charrette or whatever. There's an example.
Yeah, and I think potentially the waterfront residential districts as well. I mean, those are, you could work with Allison on just identifying some of those things, and so that we're calling them out and we're not trying to use, it's good prose. It's just, I think we really need to do something, and we're not going to do it in this comprehensive plan. We're not going to have.
So can I add that as an action then, what Herb just said about the charrettes for each, like a special neighborhoods to have like a focused,
Yeah,
planning, attention, discussion. So
And there's planning dollars that can,
I think that sounds really exciting,
yeah,
and
that's
really,
right, like a series.
vital to it.
Yeah. Can we list them
I mean,
now?
it does
Off the
kick the can down.
Yeah, well, I think you and Herb could work on those. And I'm happy to, but I think we've got a number of sections, that are there. In the past, the waterfront was always the kind of central beam for Warren. And then this market to Metacom shifted it somewhat, but that leaves, a broad swath of territory that really hasn't been dealt with. We had that discussion the last time we were talking about 136, what are we actually talking about doing there? What is appropriate and what isn't, for that area.
Yeah, I just listed off 6 based on what we've recently been talking about, so
We're
the areas we've been discussing.
we're just, like 10 or 12 people talking about it, this has, I think people would get excited,
Okay.
engaged.
Just 2 quick comments on this paragraph. Brett, I know that I judge that you have a real working list of what the water dependent businesses are. would it make sense to like lists in here? Like, industries that are water dependent, including, I don't know what those are. I mean, like, yeah, yacht club, yeah, like a boat,
Marine
Like
trade.
seafood processing.
marine trade, but yeah. But I mean, I don't know, maybe that's obvious.
You know, I can't, I like lists, because they call it out and makes it clear to people exactly what they're talking about. If you're talking about a working waterfront, to me, those are, boat builders, they're boat servicers, they're fishing operations, they're the support services for fishing operations. They're the things that need to be on the water.
Could we like call that out? Cause I mean,
Yeah.
So the term is
Yeah.
really blue economy, and here's the definition. It's the sustainable use of ocean resources for the economic growth and improvement of livelihoods and jobs while preserving the health of the ocean ecosystem.
So I can define, yes, that's blue economy, but maybe not all of those. That might be broader
Yeah,
than like
that's
needing to
broader.
be
I'd like to
cited.
be a little bit
on
more
a
specific
letter.
than that,
It's, so we could put a definition of water dependent, like examples and a definition
I mean,
within that.
with somebody
So
with
a lot of
seafood
people won't
restaurant.
know what that means. Yeah. what-
Someone with a seafood restaurant doesn't say like, well, I have a water dependent business. I want to be near the water to attract
Yeah,
customers.
it's
Somebody's
a
like,
few.
Right, so that's all I was thinking of.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the concept of the working waterfront was predicated on the idea of specifically, fishing and, processing, potentially aquaculture, although I'm not a big fan. I like.
I also think legally it's important when we had long boats for the expansion. And they went for a special use permit, were approved, but then they were appealed. The approval was appealed. And one of the elements is that, or the standards is that it has to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. How clearly can you show a judge saying, this is the plan, this is what they want to continue to preserve and build?
Right.
So again, it's very specific, certainly legally helpful to keep those institutions going on, whatever.
So boat building at the very top of the list,
That's key when you go back to, is it consistent with a comprehensive plan?
right,
It's listed. It's
Yeah.
pretty clear there.
absolutely. And fishing and fish processing and,
Example that I
marine repair, but it's amazing. Most of the folks on the board now haven't been here for the series of blount applications, but they've had a number of them and nothing has come of any of them.
the most recent one with, the offshore wind.
Yeah, and the boats and,
Yeah, they got approved in a big grant from the state and feds.
but the buildings, it never,
I don't know
yeah.
where it's at. I know that was appealed and saying, oh, thank you. And the approval was good.
Huh. Yeah, but that's definitely the concept to me of a working waterfront, and I think that it's, as Den said, the more explicit it is in the language, the better it's going to be for us to defend it. Not have, the Blount sell it out for condos, which could very well happen.
So you got like aquaculture, maritime, biotechnology, bioprospecting, fishing. I don't know what the next one is, maritime transport. I don't think do we want coastal, marine and maritime tourism? Mineral resources, offshore wind power, shipbuilding and ship repair, carbon sequestrians, coastal protection, waste disposal, biodiversity, ocean development.
Yeah, well, let's put the list together and the more specific, the better.
Well, it's
Waste disposal.
I know, I don't-
Well, that's
I
one. of the
put it all,
reasons
like,
it's like-
fish waste or something like that. I don't-
limited to these particular things,
No, it's a matter of preserving what we have. That's, I think, our best bet for this is not so much that you're saying, you were gonna get rid of restaurants. It's that, we've got a series of very effective and the boat building, the Blount operation in particular is something that gives the town its vibrancy. If it becomes, we don't want it to become another Newport, which is just a bunch of condos and docks, you know? I can remember Newport when it was, you know, really a working waterfront there, a lot of it, you know, and it's not the same. I'm not gonna make any value judgments right now. But much as I would like to.
My other super minor comment is in that following paragraph, about halfway in, the sentence that starts with however, it's got something grammatically wrong with it, so just, it's a mod.
Yeah, I can see it right now.
Are comments like that helpful? Welcome.
Yeah.
I know, sometimes I wonder.
It's always good to have another set of eyes reading.
No,
it.
for sure.
A lot
That's
of times you know, if you wrote it, then
Oh
you
my
you
gosh,
read
yeah.
it as you thought it was just.
Absolutely.
Right. You read right over it.
You know, it'd be really nice if you read stuff ahead of time and sent her an email. Yeah, that's Just pick up, but no, that, because your last question was actually a really good question that isn't just applicable there, and then highlights it from the standpoint that more and more comprehensive plans are getting sucked into legal proceedings. And you want your plan to read what you want your community to look like. Because
Right.
if you don't, if you put the ambiguity in there,
Right.
the judge is going to make the decision for you.
Right.
And I think you would rather that you tell the judge what you want, so
Right.
you can make it easy for him or her to make the decision. And better yet, not even have to go to court.
No, so just like.
So I guess, which I totally agree with what you're saying. I am thinking, is there something specific with respect to the kind of development, like to use the illustration of Newport? Do we want to say that certain types of anticipated waterfront developments are what we don't want, as opposed to just trying to name every potential thing under the sun that we possibly would want?
I think you're right. I think it's a balance between what you want and what you don't want that you want to put in there. Like if you take working waterfront and water dependent businesses there,
Right.
I can interpret that if I'm a judge to say you want your place to look like Newport.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the practical side of this, which is, and Fred, I get what your underlying concerns are. I agree that in a perfect world, we should maintain a working waterfront, and we should strive to make sure that those opportunities exist for businesses that want to come here and do work on the water. But that requires businesses to come here and want to do work on the waterfront. If someday that dries up, then we don't want empty land sitting there doing nothing. We need to think about the fact that maybe.
Or shady boat worker companies, you know what I mean? Like the only ones that would be interested in buying the distressed property because no one else wants it, you know what I mean? Or they're limited.
But Brett's correct. You
Well,
want
like,
to promote.
To finish what I was saying, we need to be able to have an open mind about filling the spaces and making the best economic use of all the areas in town, and that to me, that mindset spreads to, this dense infill and everything else we're doing, and all these applications we're hearing, right? So like, we have to make use of the land, and if that's condos and that ends up filling the space and bringing down the cost of living in the area, and you get to live in the waterfront, well, that's great. So I'm just saying, we don't want to hyper focus on restricting our waterfront to a working.
No, I'm not, I don't think we need to, but I just want to be more specific, because I think the problem was in the past that the use of historic working waterfront meant nothing. It's too ambiguous a term.
Right.
And I want to be more specific about what we've got. If that has to go, then we can deal with that at that point. It's not just about, preserving a boat building operation. It's preserving a character in the town that is made up of a variety of places, and that has affordable housing, that has places for people to work that are not just service people. I mean, you look at some of the islands in the Caribbean and they're just about tourists. They're not about anything else.
Yeah.
It's a tourist economy. Newport is a tourist economy, and I think that that's something we need to be very careful of. A tourist and a playground for the wealthy. And unless you have some protections in there, that's what it becomes, and you incrementally lose the important characteristics of the town. So I think right now, Blount's doing well. Right now, the operations that we have are okay. What we want to do is encourage them to grow, the same way we would with like a water roller or with, TPI is closing. Where do we go with that? Do we want that to become condos? No, we really want to have that be a center for manufacturing or, a place that employs people in good jobs, not, wearing a towel over their arm and serving people drinks. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, so I think, working waterfront means that we're here to be open for business to, what you just said, to employers who have water-based activities, not limited to the, hospitality industry, right? That means, people that, somehow rely on the water for their business in a commercial sense, not a retail sense.
And that's, it's fairly limited number of businesses that are.
Yeah, that includes shipping and manufacturing and, we service boats and, marinas, and there's lots of room for that, right?
It's shrinking. That's, like for example, the town wharf, through whatever damned reason, the town decided to turn that whole parking lot into the shared parking lot for restaurants. So what was supposed to be a shared space for people in town has now become a place for people to park, for the most part, who are going to restaurants. Economically it makes sense, but
I think you can use, there's examples that are out there, like up here.
Yeah.
You have the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum, where effectively the harbor that you see is the basin where Basin Harbor Club is. And basically they donated property to have the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum there. There's a whole bunch of different things that they have nowadays, programs. The Lois McClure actually was built. It's like one of the old lake type style boats that was on Lake Champlain forever. But they built it by hand right there using the tools that were available at the time, not with modern equipment. And then they do the long boats and everything as well. That sort of like is an example where they're protecting the way that the lake used to operate and doing it in the form of a museum. And then there's a whole educational center with regard to that. But overlay, that's under the umbrella of the Basin Harbor Club, which is a resort with a golf club and rooms and cabins and all that, where you go and spend all your money that you have. And then another good example is like the Mystic Seaport in Connecticut. Again, some sort of similar concept where they grabbed the history of the working environment for the water, and they've turned it into not only resort and that sort of stuff, but there's the educational aspect of it and all that. So I think that, that kind of thing, even if sort of the fishing industry goes away in here, there's opportunity to remember that and prey on.
and make it
Exactly.
economically
So,
viable.
right. So trying to accomplish two things, which is to where we can protect and preserve and promote where possible, great, but be cognizant that we may have to move to a different future, but not lose that thinking process.
I think to that end, like one of the things like on the waterfront that I would think would be critical in protecting that is to create some scenario that says that if there is something redeveloped, that it includes making access to the water public. Because one of the problems that in Bristol is not so much that they have residential on the water, but it's this like gated barrier and this wall, and nobody can even know that there's, you know, when you're on the main street right there, in many of the spots, it's just this gated private tower residence. And you can't
That's the
go
value
past that.
of those end of road.
Yeah,
public
like-
access.
Yeah, but especially when you were, I'm just thinking of like the Blount complex, if that were to ever be redeveloped, it would make our chance of preserving a culture would be better if some developer couldn't come in there and just corridor it all off and make it this exclusive spot for, you know, so that there was water access, and they would almost be incentivized to mixed-use development type
Yeah.
scenario that.
Well, I think that special development thing, definition is really key. It's mixed use, you know, that sense of being able to say, okay, you know, that a museum, a maritime museum is as relevant as a boat builder.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's the panacea.
No, I know.
But what I'm trying to do is interface what both you and Brett are saying in terms of that. And, you know, we don't want to lose the future, but we don't want to forget the past.
Yeah, and we don't want to be stuck in the past, so that
Right.
we're saying, you know, no, you have to do this, even if it's economically, you know,
Exactly.
infeasible. Oh, yeah, it's under the residence districts, you know, the special district. This district is designed primarily for the former American Tourister site along the Warren River and Parker Mill, which is what you had talked about earlier, Allison. Comprehensive development involving mixed uses is encouraged, and site plan review of development proposals is required. That's where I think a special district would give us the power to steer something. So if a Blount had to go up for sale, or a boat repair place had to go up for sale, if it's part of that special district, it gives the town some control over what's actually going to go in there. Can we give that greater attention? Right now, it's just, it's in a laundry list. But that's, I mean, it seems to me that that's what we're trying to do with any of these areas. That we want comprehensive development involving mixed uses. If we can keep it waterfront, you know, and so in a waterfront district, we want to have that element of waterfront use within anything that's developed there. And it's not just serving seafood. Yeah,
I just sent you a few different resources. I just sent you a few things from
Okay.
Rhode Island Commerce that talks about like the state schools for blue economy that we could probably align, which I think is a check on the
Yeah.
statewide planning box. And then just like what Noah says is in like the tourism and in the different industries. So I just emailed to them all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
okay.
So, Fred, you were just saying like the special district zoning district. Are you saying that maybe the town in the future should evaluate the parcels that are included with that?
Yeah, I
Just
think
expand
that's-
that, like, because there might be,
I think that's
Yeah.
when, you know, we were talking about where those charrettes would be. Those should all be special development districts because each one has a unique character. And I think when you're talking about preserving character, it's as Brett said, I mean, I think what we're talking about there is that you want to have, you want to be flexible enough to change with the times, but at the same time, you want to have control over that process. And so a special district gives you that kind of control. I have no idea why it was written in the first place. That was the Tourister site and Parker Mill. I have no idea
I think,
who even came up with that.
so I would assume that we're not the first group that has talked about wanting to see a a nicer intersection there. And so clearly that was somewhere else in the past and probably how it was put in there. And I noticed that on the GIS, it is, because that intersection near Charles Street and Metacom is a village business, even though Parker Mill's not, it's like a weird color.
It's a manufacturing. Parker Mill's manufacturing.
But they get a lot of different things in there. I mean, you've got a.
Yeah, they do. And
Gym,
runs more stuff.
you know,
Yeah, just
it
the
is.
GIS. I think
That's
all fake.
essentially what, I mean, frankly, it could potentially even be residences. I mean,
Get your new law that's gonna take effect shortly.
Yeah.
Right. If you are doing adaptive reuse of commercial industrial areas, by right, that can be residential.
right.
What was it?
What came out of my mouth was huge in terms of, that's the biggest part, in my opinion, one of the biggest parts of the new laws that just passed, that they're gonna take effect in January.
Can you say it again? Because I didn't.
So
Is
effectively.
that
what's-
anywhere? I mean,
Anywhere that's essentially adaptive reuse of an industrial facility, take Parker Mills for instance, that can be converted by right to residential. And I
Even
think
if
there might
that-
have to be an affordable component to it, but
Even if there's no, even if that entire area is not zoned for residential?
correct.
Wow.
And that's only reviewed by me and Matt. You guys are not part of it. Because it's permitted by right.
And is there anything, so you're gonna be developing an ordinance to go like with, you
So
know,
I'm trying to
yeah,
draft stuff. I'm in the middle of the zoning ordinance, trying to at least bring the new law in, but then tailor it to Warren, because I'm
Yeah.
not just gonna tailor it to necessarily what the Speaker of the House.
How do
wants.
you even do that? Because like, you know, when you think about it, like all the building codes specific to residential are specific to a zoning.
Applies that existing building setbacks and height shall remain and be considered legally non-conforming.
So whatever residential need, or however they could fit a residence in there,
As long as.
as long as it's, you know, other things, yeah.
Residential, they have a green light.
so I guess my
I
question.
mean, I
is,
kind of like it, it's, but it's like super public.
So the way I'm going to try to craft this, just to give you a hint, essentially is like a development plan review. Where there's all kinds of site considerations as part of that. I'm going to try to write the regs that even though it might be a permitted by right, that they will have to go through a necessary application process, even if it's just me and Matt reviewing, that will be the equivalent of a DPR in front of you guys. They'll have to deal with all the different criteria that they have to deal with. I can't, in good faith and my experience, I cannot let, just because that enabling law is trying to do that, to not have the flavor of what Warren wants for its community considered as part of that. I can't stop the legislature and the
Right,
governor
but-
from having enacted that it becomes a permitted right. But it does not say that I can't add Warren's flavor to it.
Right.
That's a piece of the law, is essentially is to say that, you know, it's still subject to the rules and the regulations of the particular community. So I'm not trying to,
We just need,
I'm not trying to fill something or anything along those lines, but I want to ensure that something that typically would go before you has the equivalent or that's close to oversight review as possible and oversight from that standpoint, that you know, that they are going to deal with snow storage and all the other stuff that goes with it, and that you know, for a housing area, it's going to have to deal with traffic and parking and circulation and impact on the existing street network and blah, blah,
because without that, theoretically, it would just be approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would just be an anomaly in the
be very
system,
limited in terms of
grandfathered in forever.
How many sites does it? So it's just the historic mill type spaces, or is it?
Buildings, including offices, schools, facilities, medical buildings, malls.
So
It's
all of
it's
medical,
essentially a,
all of,
it's a response to all the
Any big-
abundance of vacancy in commercial
Yeah.
buildings from
Right,
COVID.
right.
So it's like, we got to figure out an easy way to get those utilized.
Right, the Showcase Cinema becomes a residential.
With slanted doors.
Right, this is think of a lot like Pawtucket, because this really was Pawtucket bill to start with a while ago and became a statewide bill. And it's really thinking of some of these areas that are traditional industrial areas, manufacturing areas where they've got vacancies, vacant buildings. And then here's this opportunity to put some housing in there to address the affordable housing issue throughout the state. It's well intended, but it's a planner's nightmare.
I was gonna say, is town council on board with getting something approved rapidly so that
Yes.
we hit the ground running?
They're definitely on board with getting stuff on the books as soon as we can, juxtaposed with the laws coming into play.
As of January 1st.
But, you know, the actual language, you know, the planning board and the council will settle on, ultimately the council will settle on, is yet to be determined, but they're definitely in sync with getting it done, making sure the flavor of Warren remains within that thing and not just catering to what the law, you know, says you shall do, but to make sure that we are still putting our footprint on it. And then going from there.
Herb, I have a question on this. So bringing it back to the comp plan, is there any language that can be incorporated in here that would be beneficial, or because these projects aren't going to go before the planning board, the comp plan isn't going to be utilized as an approval tool, but can it in any way be utilized when you're doing administrative review? You know, the determining like consistency with the comprehensive plan as a standard. I know in some of the recent legislation, it can't be like in regard to a special use permit, but what about adaptive reuse?
Right, when you
Can
get
it
into
be a
variances,
standard?
variances and stuff, you cannot
Yeah.
use consistency with a comprehensive plan as a criteria for yay or naying a dimensional variance or a use variance.
Yeah, I'm just wondering,
but-
yeah, this adaptive reuse concept, if it's in the comp plan and some like, you know, priorities or policies in there kind of guiding private developers,
that's-
what we'd like to see, not like to see in regards to these type of projects. But then is it at all, does it have any teeth to it, I guess? is
That's
my,
where the
know,
comp
question.
plan has to evolve toward. And right now, the comp plan needs to evolve to encompass the market, the Metacom, and some of the other visions that have been out there from that standpoint. I think we need to get that on the books that allows us to change the regs to allow for the form-based code and all that. And then I think the next iteration of the plan, whether it's an amendment just a couple of years from now or 8 years from now, I think needs to better, like I said earlier, the plan you need to have the plan say what you want the town to look like. Don't leave it vague or ambiguous. You don't use the shoulds and the mays. You got to start using the shalls and the other stuff, because that's what's going to get used in the court of law eventually, as to what your town wants to do. And if you're not specific enough, the judge is going to make the decision for you.
I don't know, I just feel like I know there's housing needs. But they're just gonna throw people wherever there's room, like, this just sounds terrible, right? You know what I mean? Like, they let for-profit developers come in and make a fortune, putting people on places that really aren't designed for.
They weren't originally designed. The good thing is the legislature at least recognized that there may be some brownfield situation, EPA related
good.
situations, and I can't remember the other situation, but they said it still is subject to the
Building
EPA
code.
and something else that they said. I can't remember, but yeah, so at least they recognize there are some issues that way, because to remediate an industrial site to a residential requires a lot more intense brownfield remediation than if it's just back to another commercial industrial.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah.
DM and EPA.
Doesn't make more
We're
sense.
approaching 9 o'clock. I don't think we're going to get to economic development tonight. Like to I think we may need another special meeting.
I don't know.
I'm talking about one more, in October, as opposed to November, December, to meet our goal. Or, this could be handled at the November meeting.
Well, what's the regular meeting? It's on the 30th for October.
That's probably gonna have, well, I don't know, depends on how many TRCs are able to be held or pre-apps. For those three that came before us.
October will be October 23rd. That will be your regular.
So do you think the land use is ready to go?
I know that Allison and I can pick up on the things that you did if you want to move that forward. If you feel you need it, the last bit of stuff put in there and then the last review to shoot it off at the next meeting, that's up to you folks. Allison's been really good about capturing what you guys talk about, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this one, this has been a very good discussion in terms of, where we are on this land use. And. I
Or
mean,
is there anything you think that we missed that, knowing these like new things that are coming out that we should add that like you want to do the reviews to make sure that like we didn't
I think,
neglect something that we should?
well, for me, again, there's been so much effort that's completed to date, and really we're trying to fine tune the last few chapters to get them off and then get into the public hearing process. I think for gory detail, the public hearing process will handle that sort of stuff. I think if you're gonna do some serious sort of housing related stuff to the comprehensive plan, what I would be more recommending of you is to, once this is sort of off and in the hands of the council, from that standpoint, you guys could revisit the housing element from that standpoint as a pot and for an amendment in the future, and just focus on the housing element and speak to the things that you need to. And then where the tentacles go into maybe some different elements like land use, you can make those recommended corrections at that point. Because there's nothing that says that you can't propose amendment for a plan, even if it's 1 month after the adoption.
No, that's great.
And then that way you might be able to focus a little bit. I'm concerned that if you keep going down this sort of track of repeat, go forward.
Yeah, no, I don't
keep going
wanna.
Forward, you're gonna make your 30-year history of on the same plan instead of 15 years, right? So
I don't have enough time.
I think it's
I don't have that time.
I
See,
think it's critically important to keep this plan moving forward
Yeah.
as is. Recognize it's not going to be perfect, but back pocket or file folder those things that we need to deal with in terms of housing, as there are things that Ben and I might explore in looking at at amending the regulations. If it's something we feel needs to go in the plan, I can again back pocket file folder those, and then we can revisit the plan to carry out
Sure.
amendments that are necessary.
Okay, so let's, we can give it to you folks to massage and then send off.
If you're comfortable with that,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the maps, like the future land use are adapted. You haven't done that right yet, based on our last
A
meeting.
little more cleanup to zoning map, make sure everything, recent amendments are incorporated. Yeah, but they're close.
Yeah, so the
They're
future
just-
land use, for example, the key farm's not there and that kind of stuff, but as long as that happens, I'd say make a motion to, turn it over to Herb and Allison for sending to statewide planning.
I'll move that.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Matt, all in favor?
Uh,
What do we need another meeting in October, Herb, to meet our deadline for the second act development? Anything else that's left?
So what's left now after tonight's actions would be economic development. Help me out here, Alice, I'm drawing a blank.
Transportation.
No, housing, economic development, natural resources.
That was it. So there's 3 remaining elements after tonight.
Is it reasonable to assume that we could have something in 2 or 3 weeks or no?
I think, so if I had to second guess your October agenda, you're clearly going to deal with Liberty Street application. Whether the other groups that were in the room get an application in and in time to be deemed complete to meet, hearing requirements and all that, I don't know. I mean, Penny Lane clearly has, they're,
You're almost there.
they basically put in a pre-app that was the equivalent of the master plan.
Right.
The Road Street is behind in that matter, but it's not as intense of a project in terms of what's being proposed.
Right.
It's a little more vanilla. So I suspect Penny Lane will want to be in the door for October. I just don't know if I can, it depends when and what they get in the door.
And that's, I would think both of those are going to be hot button.
Liberty Street's gonna be a long night, in terms of.
Yeah, all those people that were here tonight were there for
They were all here
Liberty
for Liberty Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you will have, that will be a public hearing from that standpoint. You'll probably have to, like you did, I'll be sure to put the applications up front, from that standpoint, with a comp plan in the latter half of the meeting. So we can put all three of those elements on the October meeting, maybe with a vote, I don't know. Which
Not gonna happen.
is the focus.
No,
not gonna
both of those, I think.
No,
you-
it's not
I think
gonna
you
happen.
have
I'm just
Not
trying to keep-
Liberty
I'm
and.
just trying to keep it rolling,
and
Jack.
do-
I can do
It's
a
not gonna
special
be-
meeting on the 16th of October. And then, I mean, the longer we get into the holidays, I'm just
Right.
not gonna have the time to do this, special meetings.
Yeah, no, I
I'd
don't,
rather just try to knock it out when we don't have to talk.
I've got one more in me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'd be the 16th.
I can do the 16th.
I can do that.
I don't know if I can,
Oh, so it would be 16th for a special meeting to talk about the remaining elements. And if everybody comes in with like rallying, sleeves rolled up, let's.
We could even start at 6.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
I can do that.
Okay.
I can't do that. I can't be there at 6. I can be there at 6:30.
No, that's okay.
I think you come in late.
So the
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And, I mean, Terry's been here for everything. So,
All right.
I mean, after the 15th? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we're looking at the 16th. And by the way, thank you very much for your attendance here.
I'm booking it for 6 to 9 PM, an hour on each element. And I think any more than that, we're just belaboring our voices.
Yep.
For no
Okay.
good reason.
Great.
And Haley, as far as you know, that Monday is. gonna
City
be
couldn't make it
free.
until 6:30.
Mondays are pretty open.
He's gonna come late.
Yeah.
If not, I'll
Yeah,
let
well,
you know.
Well, if not, make it.
We can
I'll
drop a
try to get there.
petition and not.
Yeah, we can post it.
You missed it.
There should be a week here for
Yeah.
the public.
Right.
Yeah, right.
We'll
It'd be
see
anyway.
closer.
All right, motion to have a special meeting on the 16th. I'll make that motion. A second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay. If you can't make it, again, we do have Terry here as our alternate. We do need to.
Could I make a request?
Sure.
Herb, I appreciate your comment of you could have sent that, I know you're just being snarky, but it's not realistic for me to review 197 pages in 3 days. So
I get that.
just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I think the earlier we can get this, the better, because then that makes it easier to make those kind of comments.
Yeah.
The number down, adding a special meeting, that means like next, week, like that kind of, I know we just had that special meeting, but I need to turn around like.
Brutal.
Right.
We just had a couple of weeks, but, I don't know. if you-
Again, so, and that's okay.
Maybe we get really good and then. On that 23rd,
Right.
right? It's not.
Well, again, a possibility would be to come in early and handle it before, and.
Yeah, on
and
the- on
do
the day of the regular
On the day of the regular meeting for if we have one last element
Oh, yeah.
and then go in at a 7 o'clock start, because it's traditionally been a 7 o'clock start. I mean,
Or
I'm
we
not-
could do it at the same time and do it before while the crowd sits there and stares at us.
Yeah, no, that's not, that is not gonna happen.
That would be very fun.
Things are gonna be hot enough without that. Oh, my God.
I know that was.
Hokey smoke, man, I'm sorry. So anyway, that, there we are.
No, it'll be a developer that brings something to court over the not getting a development approval or whatever related to conformity with a town plan. They will pick on anything in that comprehensive plan to get the judge's attention. It doesn't, it's not, we all understand land use is a critical element from that standpoint, but they'll go into the deep, dark recesses of that comprehensive plan to find something that supports them.
Some
Yeah.
broad, language that fits what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I always try to grammar planning boards to death. Try not to use will, don't use shall, don't
Right.
use should, don't use may.
Awesome.
Write a sentence with a true verb.
What? Sorry, this is
Um,
random, but kind of related. So am I correct that, 119 water, we did?
I have not seen any appeals, so and it's several weeks after from that standpoint, so I think that bodes well for everybody from the standpoint that nothing's gonna get hung up judicially. Now the question is, what may or may not come back in the door with regard to an application.
Well, and benign neglect can lead to, ultimately a demolition permit if it, if nobody does anything and the town doesn't insist on anything.
I think they're
They
gonna,
don't have to, they can come to the town council. The only reason we got the demolition permit was because they put it through the comprehensive plan. Should they or anybody else decide to do it, they can go to the town council and say, this is what we want to do. It has nothing to do with any other plan, other than the fact that we want to take these buildings down.
I think what they'll probably bring back in the door is something that's more traditional in terms of what was there with, like restaurant and the residential with commercial downstairs type thing. So but I don't know until they want to bring something back in the door, but at least from the standpoint of a judicial perspective, which can be a calendar galore, that nothing is in the door in regard to that.
I'll talk about this later. I was wondering about the Fredericks Farm, that place, but let's get out of here. That comprehensive, the Days Inns that they wanted to build next to.
Not on the agenda.
Okay, motion to adjourn then? All in favor? You can vote.